Alright, I know it has been a super long time, but I'm gonna post a video. It is currently the 24th of September, so a lot longer than I planned on making another video, but me and my editor haven't really been able to hook up and haven't had good equipment and all that. There's a bunch of reasons, and I'm sorry I left you guys hanging, all 12 of y'all. No. But this topic definitely isn't the one I expected to be doing next, but has been really on my head. No. And I'm hoping that the content of this message supersedes the quality of this video, and you guys can stick with me through this. Because this topic has been heavy on my heart for a little bit, so I really want to talk about it, even if it's just on a Samsung S Edge camera plug. I'm kidding. And that's gay oppression in the black community. Because this is one of, like, the most paradoxical, just illogical things that I see happening a lot. Not illogical, it has logic behind it, but it's not anything that I really agree with. Actually, first talk about the interconnectedness of plights. It seems like a lot of times in discussion, even positive ones, if you bring up another group's plights in comparison to another one's, it's probably not going to have a productive discussion. You probably shouldn't be doing it anyway, because there's much more positive ways to talk about the interconnectedness of plights besides comparing them directly. It's like every time I see things between like feminists and civil rights activists and, well, bad ones, is that if these two people start talking about something, it turns into a who suffered more off, and that's a really dangerous game to try to play with any humanitarian effort, because really they're all very much interconnected and they should stay interconnected, and interconnectedness doesn't need to mean they're the exact same, which seems to be what happens a lot. And that's where this gay oppression thing kind of fits into all this. It's really sad that a group that's already marginalized will devote so much of its time and energy to then further oppressing people within their community. I'm not saying that this is every black person. I'm not saying every black person is homophobic or every black person is hateful towards gay people, which I guess is homophobic, so I was a little bit redundant. But this definitely is a problem that I'm seeing a lot. It might be happening in other communities too, but I'm black, so I care about the black one at the moment. And it's a really sad thing to see. Part of it might be the fear of knowing that as a black person, you're already going to get, have a harder go of things, and then being gay on top of that probably just won't help at all. So maybe, these people are afraid for their children. They don't want them to have to go through like a double struggle, just one struggle, per person maybe, and that's what the fear is. But I'm also seeing a lot of it, as a expression of how oppressed a lot of black people are now. We had to deal with being told how we had to live our lives a lot, even having our housing dictated and things like that. And I'm not even talking about slavery, I'm talking about after that. So I think a lot of that oppression that was thrown upon us, we're now throwing back into our community to try to stop what we think, or what people tend to think is another wrong thing. As is the case with a lot of discussions involving the oppression of homosexuality, I see a lot of religious involvement in this, which I also think is very paradoxical and ironic, because I see black people, churchgoers, black Christians, damning and condemning gay people in their community for being gay, like saying how it's not okay with God and how it's against the Bible, it's a sin, you're living your life in sin. And on one end, that's kind of a nice sentiment, to be so concerned about someone's afterlife that you try to steer them away from what you think might lead to eternal damnation. Like, I feel that. I get it. At the end of the day, it's people trying to look out for other people, but probably just doing it incorrectly. But what I don't understand about that mindset is that, Jesus died, like, specifically so you couldn't be condemned to hell. Jesus' sacrifice should be substantial enough for you not to eternally damn someone for their sexual orientation or preference. And that seems pretty simple, but maybe not. Like, in the Bible, it says to love one another, and all these really positive, uplifting message and a bunch of not positive, uplifting things, but mostly, for the most part, positive. And I don't see how that tends to stop at loving gay people in the black community a lot of times, even if they're your own kids. Accepting, and not just loving them even though they're gay, but accepting their gayness and then still loving them, ideally, is what you should be going for. Because now, when I say that Jesus died so that you couldn't be condemned to hell, that should not be interpreted as Jesus died so you can sin without consequence. That's not how I interpret that sacrifice. You shouldn't go lying, thieving, stealing, redundant, but preying on the weak. That's a crime against a man, your fellow man, and is in turn a crime against yourself. Anytime you're causing harm or oppressing another person, you're also hurting yourself, and humanity in general. But being gay, expressing your love for a person despite their gender being the same as yours, does not, to me, seem like a crime against humanity or yourself even. Sin typically comes into play when you start doing things without having God in your heart. That's where sin is prominent. If you love God, then the things that you do will reflect that love for him and all of his beings, and should result in you being a positive person for the sake of wanting to take care of this world that God has given us and blessed us with. But loving someone doesn't really fall under the category of not appreciating or protecting God's blessings. I also see a lot of really far reaches in the discussion about homosexuality in general, not just in the black community. Like, well, if you're dating other men, how long until we're dating animals and children and things like that. But it's generally understood that if an adult is consenting, then love is love. A child cannot consent. They don't know better. Animals can't consent. That should not that argument is really stupid. Not very logical to kind of snowball from that into that. And I would like to think that the Bible is a liberating tool, not one to be used to oppress people. I mean, I guess most religious texts are probably at least a little bit used to oppress people, but for the most part, like, it should be a tool to uplift yourself. And if you're expressing hatred towards a person for being gay, especially in a religious context, I don't understand how you could expect them to feel uplifted by the Bible. I understand that sin is sin, and the Bible should deliver you from that. But condemning someone to hell and eternal damnation for who they love just does not seem like a productive way to get people into heaven. If that makes sense. No, so I think there's a lot of issues with the views of homosexuality in the black community, and I feel like it has led to a lot of unnecessary oppression from black people against other black people. Like, we already have a lot working against us, and we don't need to be doing the job of the oppressors for them. And I would also like to say that I'm not gay. I'm not even Christian. But this dialogue has been something that I see so often, and my heart really hurts for my gay brothers and sisters, because I know so many black kids that had to deal with racism and racial dynamics in their own lives, and then also deal with not feeling like they were accepted by their own community, who should at the very least understand oppression enough to see past that and accept these black brothers and sisters who like other black brothers and sisters, but they can't. And that's really sad, because that's dividing our own community. You see other races also going through a civil rights movement about homosexuality, but it's hard for me to see more than in the black community this rejection of that. And I feel like that's really splintering us and weakening the black community as a whole. Because it's almost to the point where we don't even want to have a discussion about it. It just disgusts us too much. And I just really like to see some of that change. That was about it. I didn't really have much else to say other than that. If you are gay, if you are gay, understand yourself and love yourself, and don't try to look for acceptance and love from outside of yourself. That's not to say that you don't deserve acceptance and love from outside of yourself, but never get to the point where people's inability to accept who you are and who you love steers your life in a direction where you're constantly feeling regret and feeling like you're and if you're gay, not even you're gay and black, but if you're gay and you're struggling to accept that part of yourself, maybe you're not in a very good household, maybe you are influenced by a lot of people being mean, maybe you're being bullied or anything like that. Try your hardest not to look for love and acceptance outside of yourself. Know that you're good enough for you. Now that doesn't mean you don't deserve love and acceptance for outside yourself, and I'm sure you will find it one day, but don't let other people's inability to accept you for who you are lead to you condemning yourself or forsaking who you are. Try your best to live a life that doesn't hurt others, but mostly doesn't oppress yourself. Because also in the black community, there's a lot of self-oppression for gay people who feel like they're letting their grandmas down, letting their churches down, and they can't even accept themselves. And that's a really sad thing to see for anyone, but especially for my people. You guys have a good afternoon. Oh, also, I'm writing a book. I will throw the link to the GoFundMe in this video, because, I mean, need that bread? Nah, but if not, just let me know. Love you guys, and signing out.